We are migrating to the old Brits, I suppose, really, isn't it? Is that what we're doing, boys?
We are migrating old Brits and hits, and we've already migrated in the podcast. The old Brits and hits podcast.
That's very true.
We've all migrated to that one.
Yeah, of course. And if you want to follow us, just search out Old Brits Podcast on Twitter or Old Brits on Instagram, and we'll sort the Facebook out thing. But Facebook's becoming a bit passé, isn't it, these days? A bit old-fashioned. What old people go, actually, that is us. Yes, we'll sort it. We'll get that sorted.
See, know your place. Know your place.
Yeah, indeed.
We're some of us are treading closer to the edge, ready to fall off than some of the others.
Indeed.
I think I'm walking closer to the edge than you guys at the moment.
Hey, look, you know, on the show we like a woke story or two here and there.
Oh yes.
We like a bit of wokeness or dislike it, don't we? Apparently, now calling criminals convicts is offensive. Have you heard this?
No.
Yeah. The prison service has told all of its warders and officers to drop the phrase ex-con, for example, and instead call them persons with lived experience.
No,
isn't that a load of nonsense?
Well, here's the thing: what context would a prison officer then say you're an ex-con? Then would he maybe if you met them in the pub or something?
Yeah, or when they return.
So he's no longer an ex-con. Oh, you've come back. All right, you come back home. Well, that's nonsense.
Con is just a shorter version of convict, and they've been convicted of a crime. So there's nothing offensive about that.
That's the right way to look at it, isn't it? But will they then be challenging the judge that we now can't say you can have convictions? What would be the alternative for that? We're asking you to go away for a few weeks or a few years.
Yes, we would like to send you at His Majesty's pleasure. I wonder who the first person to get His Majesty's pleasure was in the criminal system.
No. It wasn't a criminal. It was Camilla.
Oh, it was Camilla. Yeah. It was still Her Majesty's present. Okay.
But she got Her Majesty's pleasure.
Yes, I bet you did. Yes. Apparently, the prison service said it was part of the.
I'm heading off to the courts now. You realise that, don't you?
Yeah. Apparently, it's a clampdown on inappropriate deviations from its guidelines. It's all getting a bit wokey, isn't it? The national chairman of the Prison Officers Association trade union was instructed to drop the use of the words in an official letter from the Ministry of Justice. So the Ministry of Justice, government, in other words, they're the ones that have come up with this edict because they don't want to offend people. It's just unbelievable, isn't it?
What about the poor person who was offended by the ex-con? Does that make sense?
Explain.
Okay, well, the poor person who was offended, so the offence was caused to somebody.
Yeah.
That made the convict be put away or the conviction passed. So what about him? What about that person? Who's caring about them? That's the problem, you see. We put the cart before the horse in a lot of instances, don't we? We got it the wrong way round. We should be looking at why were they there in the first place? Because let's hope we don't do anything that's going to put us inside. But we try and tread the line between good, don't we? That's what we aim to do. That's what most people aim to do.
But the thing is, there was a prison officer who was interviewed, and he or she said, when I talk to prisoners, they call themselves cons. So why is it offensive? That's what they want to be called.
To some of them, I guess they may wear that as a badge of honor.
The convicts, yeah.
Yeah, they may wear that, as a badge of honor. I mean, hey, listen, I have nothing against anybody who's been in prison. It happens, doesn't it? But why don't you just? Why do we have to sort of kowtow to them on a terminology? Because, as you rightly pointed out, they are ex-convicted people.
Yeah, well, they want to call them persons with lived experiences. Well,
that's all of us, isn't it?
That's all of us. Yeah, I'm a person with lived experiences. You are. All of us are. Does that make us convicts? No, it doesn't.
Well, no, we haven't got a prison record, have we?
Well, you
No.
speak for yourself. But
I've got a few police records.
yeah.
A couple of albums as well, I think.
Yes. Do da da da.
Got a song called "The Chain Gang" by well, that's about prisoners.
Sam Cooke.
Sam Cooke, yeah.
Sam Cooke, yeah. In fact, or Jimmy Young.
Unchained Melody.
No, he did Chain Gang as well.
Chain Gang.
Chain
That's what it is, isn't it? The relief when the handcuffs come off.
Yes, Unchained Melody. Yeah. So I don't know. It does seem now that we're going down the stupid road now, aren't we?
Yeah,
Well, it
yeah,
is.
Everybody can say, somebody must have said.
Well-
somebody must have raised the point that I don't like being referred to as an ex-con.
Yeah.
So one person I bet must have said that, and
I
then
suppose
somebody
it does,
on the-
you know, it affects people's chances if you have been convicted of a crime and you've done your time and you come out of prison, then you know the record is or the slate has been wiped clean because you've done your time.
correct.
And then if you're looking to get a job and they go, what was your previous experience? Well, I'm an ex-con. You're not going to get the job, are
They're
you?
not going to say that, are they? I mean, you're right. Because but
because-
why wouldn't they? Because who knows? Because of course, a lot of people who are offenders, offenders, or people with lived in experiences, or whatever they're calling it.
Yes.
A lot of them, there's nothing wrong with them after they've come out. I mean, there wasn't anything wrong. They just fell off the wagon before they went in.
They did, yeah,
And
yeah.
they come out, and they should be given an opportunity at what they can do, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah.
And they should be given an opportunity. So I don't think you put on your CV, would you? 7 years as an ex-con, you wouldn't do that. You put in there when I used to do, you know, when I worked and I did CV advice for people looking for new careers. We'd look at all the best things they had to offer, and we put those onto that CV in the best way we could. Well, wouldn't you do the same? If someone has been as an offender inside and they've learned new skills, then you use those skills, and they'd have to justify where they've been for the last 5 years or 4 years or 3 years, and they go, well, I was away learning these new skills.
Yeah, you could do.
So you have to use it to the benefit, and I think it will also offend one person.
If you're interviewing somebody for a job and they sit there and you say, "Can you explain to me, you know, what have you been doing for the last 5 years?" For example, they go, "Oh, I'm a person with lived experience,"
Yes.
and you go, "Ex-con." Yeah.
Yeah. Well, or you'd say, "Can you expand on that?
Yeah.
Tell me what that means to you, and how that's going to help me as an employer."
Well, I think that's where they're going to fall down, though, isn't it? You can't explain that sort of thing. That's the trouble.
Well, but they've always had to do that. It's never said. I don't think it's. I can't believe it's ever said on their CV, ex-convict, or I was in strange ways for the last 5 years. I can't imagine it said that on their CV.
You know all these forms you fill in these days, and it says, you know, health and religion. And that. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? And you have to say yes or no. And if you tick yes, then you have to explain when, what, and wherefore, I suppose. I've always ticked no because I've never been convicted of a crime, apart from speeding and, you know, all that stuff. So have you been convicted of a crime? So the word ex-con is an abbreviation of convict or convicted, isn't it? So they then going to have to now remove that phrase. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? To be replaced by, have you ever had a lived experience? So then you have to, and naturally you'd have to take yes, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we all would.
What
You
have
don't have to do that. But if they said you're convicted of a crime, that makes them a criminal.
Indeed.
So that sounds even worse to me.
Yeah.
If you think about it on a word, if you're thinking about words, being a criminal sounds worse than an ex-con, doesn't it? It does to me.
And that's what somebody in this article I was reading was complaining about, that the fact that they're manipulating the English language now. So that the government are manipulating the English language for wokeness, if you want to call it that. Which is wrong, isn't it? You shouldn't do that.
And you know, it's bad advice, isn't it? It's bad advice. Somewhere the government has ended up with some bad advice, and they've acted badly on that bad advice.
Yeah.
So it's ill judged, isn't it?
I don't know who's been advising the government. Jeffrey Archer, maybe?
No, who knows?
Well, I mean, and you see, there's a classic example of an ex-con.
Yeah.
in the nicest possible way. Did it ever cause him any problem in his career?
No.
No. In fact, when he went to prison, when he was convicted of his whatever he was convicted for, he actually wrote half a dozen books while he was.
He had more time to write.
Well,
Yeah.
look at Donald Trump. He was he was found guilty of some cause only a couple of weeks ago. Has it caused him a problem? It's raised his profile even more. So I think to me, it's about the individual, how they apply themselves after that event, as opposed to look. If everybody wants to feel downbeat about themselves, then no employer wants to see someone or employ somebody who's downbeat about themselves, because you want the best for your business. So if you're going to employ somebody, you want somebody who's upbeat, forward, assertive, and whatever. And I think the life skills that somebody as an ex-con would have in some instances would be a great advantage.
Yeah, no, it would
Be a great advantage to an employer. And so in which case, embrace it. You can't undo those 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. You can say that it's improved you, it's made you a better person. If it's done all that, which is probably what happened with the likes of Jeffrey Archer and say Donald Trump, he's thrown it away, isn't he? He said, well, it's all wrong.
Yeah.
So it's how you embrace the problem as opposed to blaming other people. And I think we're more in a blame culture society than we are of taking ownership of a problem that affects us as individuals.
I was watching a documentary about Ken Dodd on the telly the other night, and I'd seen it before. I must admit, they showed it after he passed away. Was it about a year ago now? Wasn't it? Something like
no, longer than that. I
years,
think,
I don't know. Anyway, they were talking to his wife and a number of people, and they showed a few clips, obviously, of his stage show, and they showed one after he went to court, didn't he, over tax evasion and so on. He wasn't convicted; he was found innocent of all charges. But he hadn't paid his tax bill, and it was proved that he just didn't have a clue, and he, wasn't down to him, and all of that stuff. And then in one of his stage shows, he was talking about the Romans who invented tax. And he said, yes, of course. And for many years, it was £1 and 100 you had to pay or something. He said, the problem is I still thought that was the same. That was the case. Which is a very funny thing. So that's an example, like Jeffrey Archer, of people making hay out of their conviction.
Absolutely. And if you think back, it's a good analogy, really, because if you think back to Ken Dodd, he was everybody's darling for managing, and I don't mean this in any other way, for managing the problem with tax. Wasn't he? He was deemed as well done. Because well done. You actually beat the system, and he hadn't done it intentionally or whatever, but he'd proven that he was incompetent in what he was doing with tax, and he was acceptable. That was accepted, quite rightly so. We all make mistakes.
Who was that other fellow who went to prison? Lester Piggott, wasn't he?
Lester Piggott, yeah.
Yes, he went to prison for it, didn't he?
He did indeed, yeah. And there were a couple of others. There's been a couple of others over the years, but of course, I guess from that point of view, I mean, I think Ken Dodd, he defended himself, didn't he?
I think he did, actually. I think he did, yes.
Himself.
Not actually, no. He did have a barrister, and one of the top ones in the UK as well.
And a couple of Diddy men.
Which these days would be offensive.
Yeah, so there was two of them in court, wasn't there? There's two of them in court, wasn't there? Did he pay? Did he like?
Well, did he, man?
Yeah, did he pay?
The judge.
Did he like?
Did he get away with it? Yeah. Hey, look, it's the Old Brits Podcast, and we're here, well, from wherever you get your podcasts.